Well, I want to thank the organizers, Melanie, Peter, Tim, for doing this, and our lovely photographer over there. What I wanted to talk about, I've named this a little brief talk on the ethics of what's happening to us. And of course, there are no ethics in what's being done to us. It's totally evil. But of course, this evil of harassment, electronic harassment.
Sorry, let's switch the microphones because people say that this one's not working very well.
Okay.
Let's try this one.
This one should be better.
Is this one better? Yes, okay. There's no ethics. But that's not the only place there's no ethics. The world is essentially a matrix of lies and a mess. And actually, I don't think it can be fixed, although I'm very optimistic it has to be rebuilt. What we are frequently told, as George Bush used the term for the first time, of the New World Order. And that is really not what we're up against. We're up against actually the ancient world order, something that actually goes back into the Ice Age. This is my opinion of it. And this, of course, changes a lot of the way one thinks about things. And thinking is a problem for us because we don't know exactly what's been done to our brains over a period of thousands of years, or our minds, in terms of the information that's been put in, patterns of thought, and indulging in a system of beliefs. I got into this in 1996. I graduated from Stanford University. I'm a graduate of the Yale Medical School and the University of California Neurology program. And you know, you really don't learn anything there. They didn't tell me anything about right technology. They didn't say anything at all about the electronic smog that's enveloping us. And they didn't admit that the drug companies are a big problem. But in 1996, I changed. I began to move forward, and I guess because there are Brits present, I'll say that there was a program on the Shakespeare authorship that got me going. I was very entranced with why Droeshow etching of Shakespeare seems to be a picture of a demented turnip, and why he only could write about second best bed. But that's a lot of fun. But this going on is to not be much fun. I read L. Fletcher Prouty, who quoted Buckminster Fuller, who had traveled all over the world and said that wherever he went, the men, the people who were supposed to be in charge were in fact not in charge, and they were answering to someone else. There's something higher there. And so I began to pursue this and go along with the various pathways of tyranny that's come down through us. One also had to study the history of the Jews to do this. What I eventually found out when things changed is when I read a book, Maps of the Ancient Kings by Charles Hapgood. I found out that the entire Earth had been mapped during the Ice Age. How many knew this? Hands. There are actually hands out there. Well, you didn't learn it in school, right? They didn't talk about this. I did talk to a woman who had learned this from her teacher or professor, and she was taken in the back room and they pulled shades down, and he told her very quietly what had happened. And this is the nature of our education, our higher education, which might be best described as higher censorship. But so the entire Earth was mapped during the Ice Age, and a huge civilization was here, and we don't know anything about it. And there are undersea megalithic structures along the coastlines all around the world. And the maps by periods show Antarctica when the coastline was free of ice and the sea level was 400 feet. I can't convert that to meters even over here. Lower. So this is interesting for a number of reasons, not the least being climate change. We're told that we're changing the climate with our SUVs, our carbon dioxide, I guess breathing is a greenhouse gas. But in fact, melting about 3 kilometers of ice over Europe and North America must have required some climate change, not due to anything done by man. So this is just an aside on the whole business of climate change, which is being used to introduce tyranny here. And then the question is, why, who could have done this? And it turns out that there are candidates, of course. Naturally, there's going to be ET candidates because they're everywhere. Catherine Austin Fitts said, well, you know, a breakaway civilization, she did a calculation, about $100 trillion worth of UFOs flying around. But it turns out there is another species on the planet, a large brain hominid, Homo capensis, was actually found in South Africa, Boskop, South Africa. And 2 researchers, Lynch and Granger, studied this brain 30% larger. So you have a human being with a brain, or what appears to be a human being with a brain 30% larger. And they did a calculation and gave it an average IQ, conservatively 149, with 10 to 15% of the population at 180 or more. And so obviously that being was capable of mapping the Earth. Well, did Homo capensis map the Earth, or did these coneheads map the Earth? I don't know of any direct evidence. They certainly seem to have, they were more likely to know spherical trigonometry than we were at that time. But now we have this world which is devoid of ethics. It's been described in great detail. And we have these organizations. On my side of the Atlantic, we have the United States government, which isn't a government. Actually, it's a corporation, because the United States legitimate government was dissolved or buried in 1871. And I suppose the system is the same everywhere, since that corporation did so much damage to the world. And we're run by a system of alleged for-profit. Everything is for profit. And ethics and humanity don't count. And what is a human? I think that what we think of as a human, what we want, what we actually are, I'm sure in this room, are people who have a conscience, who understand love and compassion. And if you look at the world, it's not that way at all. And I attended a lecture at the European Union, and where the Nobel Prize laureate told us that there were actually people who didn't believe in global warming. So how can we do anything? How can we expect anything of government when we don't have governments? We have corporations, and we're being tortured, and other things are being done to us, like Fukushima. I think we have to state our humanity all the time, and we have to say loudly all the time that the corporations are not human, and that they have no business running us, and that we want constitutional government back. And I think that's one pathway to getting rid of this remote torture. I'm sorry that Magnus is not here, talked to him briefly last night. We were talking about the number of targeted individuals who commit suicide. And I think we need to keep records of that. I don't know, are there records kept in detail? Because what we want to do is we want to make the people who absolutely insist that there is not being done, we want to make them uncomfortable. We want to show them this list of people who have committed suicide because of the various symptoms and torture they were feeling. And we can say, well, you know, that's happening to me. You want me to commit suicide? Anything to make them uncomfortable. People who I think actually may be mind controlled. Because the signals are out there. And if one regards the alien abduction as being more probable, a phenomenon of EEG heterodyning with supercomputers, and the phenomenon of the Mothman, which would seem to be an experimental program in 1966. This stuff is old, and I think we can expect worse when the economy collapses, as they keep threatening of having these alien invasions and other reasons why we need to give up. Well, I think I've said as much as I want to say at this point. I don't want to go into the controversial aspects. I think that it's very important to study the concepts of extraterrestrials and religion, and think about it in terms of what we find that's hidden in history, because we don't know anything of this large civilization, of this world-encompassing civilization that existed during the Ice Age. So I would encourage everyone to add that to the list of things that they need to do. And certainly anyone can contact me if you want, and after I'm not jet-lagged, I'll try and give you a coherent, more coherent story. Thank you.
Give us your contact details. Have you got a website?
Actually, my website was what Akhenaten. I'm getting another one. I don't have one at this point. But Akhenaten is part of this because it looks like he was a conehead, not human.
Do you know Dr. Leonard Horowitz in the United States?
I do. I've met him.
Yeah, because he said those in charge are behaving against humanity, and one could thought that they are perhaps not usual humans.
I think that is a possibility. I'm inclined to believe that. I'm inclined to believe they are mathematicians that actually did rather incredible things in placing stones to match Orion, and I guess we have Stonehenge. And if we look at this, whether it's Adam's calendar, you know, the stones are placed there to show Orion and Orion's belt something like 75,000 years ago. And the artistic accomplishment with that is just abysmal. They just pile these rocks there. I mean, it almost looks like it was an architect for the European Union building that did that. You know, and I mean, I'm very suspicious of things like the destruction of Dresden as being done partially because it's a beautiful city. I think this needs to be studied. Just another way of looking at it. Yes?
Jumping from the suppression of history to the suppression of science, and you have a medical degree?
Yes.
Do you believe that right technology can be used to solve some of the issues that are being experienced here?
The right technology?
Yes.
Well, I've wondered about that. I really, you know, the MSRA, the bad infections, terrible infections, you'll probably be knocked right out with the right technology. I've never had any experience with it. Actually, I've been on a machine, but I really don't know anything about it. I've read about it. You know, the real story there is the government did it end? We also have to think about, well, them right. I think that, obviously the right technology should be applied to many problems. And there's other technology. There's the lens neurofeedback system. And this is very interesting. I'd like to see if this would block out voice to skull. This instrument, it's made there in California. The signal that this thing allegedly puts out was so low that if you said that the distance from the floor to the moon could be used to represent the power of a cell phone, well, this thing would go from the floor to here. I mean, it almost doesn't exist. Yet it has a profound immediate effect on the nervous system. And people are treated with this and for depression and other things. I would love to get someone with a voice to skull phenomenon to see if it would block it out. So there's a huge amount of technology out there that would be really nice to use. Thank you.
Thank you very much.